What's the most desperate thing you've ever done for money? Story 1. I participated in a food study where I couldn't eat for a day before, arrived at the lab crazy early in the morning, had a tube put down my throat, and lay there for 6 hours as they pumped liquids into and out of my stomach. After the first 2 hours, I begged them to at least turn on the TV, but they would only let me watch PBS so I couldn't accidentally see any commercials about food. It wasn't fun, but the pay was decent, and they served me a steak dinner afterward. I sold my body to a substance study for 3 weeks in 1991. We took a dose of some antibiotic every day and had blood drawn throughout the day. Every day. Pay was $2,000, which was sweet for 1991. Being in the substance testing facility for 3 weeks was interesting. I participated in clinical studies, just ones that let me go home. Just finished my second one. Kind of weird to get laid for free health info and to take stuff that can potentially help or harm me. But overall, I have had a positive experience, and hopefully this leads to helping more people. Wait, you typed this, I think, as kind of weird getting laid for free health info rather than paid? I absolutely did. That would have been an entirely different experience for a clinical trial. It confused the smeg out of me. I thought you were awkwardly bragging about getting some at the trials. I got paid $1,000 to drink screwdrivers and be flashed by bright lights. Basically, got paid to get drunk with a bunch of sensors hooked up to me. That's pretty interesting. What were they studying exactly? This was almost 40 years ago at the Mayo Clinic. Honestly, I don't even think I even asked what the study was. If I remember right, they paid $120. How much torture a hungry person would take for food? While most participants ended the procedure within a range of 15 seconds to 125 seconds due to extreme discomfort, one outlier tolerated over 21,000 seconds. Our hypothesis is that this must have resulted from an abnormal pain tolerance, as the financial incentive was intentionally low, equaling less than minimum wage for the participant. I've done 53 substance studies. The tube down my throat one was the worst, incredibly painful, only paid $2,000, and they banned me from the site for giving accurate feedback that it was incredibly painful. Frack AbbVie and Wukagan. I mean, I did a bunch of studies there before that went fine, but I'm still ticked. Edit. This is getting some traction, so I'll elaborate on my beef with AbbVie. One of the purposes of doing substance studies is for the subjects to report if they have any adverse effects. But if you do report your adverse effects, you're at risk of being blacklisted for future studies. So savvier subjects than me don't report them, so the study fails to accomplish what it's supposed to. They're juking the stats they report to the FDA. Oh, man. So how is it possible to peer review studies like this, to have someone look at the data? I think that would involve having to bring people back and interviewing them about their experiences. And that's a weird way. That's a really sneaky way to try and get the stats going in your direction. Story 2. Participated in a sleep study where they had us wired up to electrodes to monitor our responses at periodic intervals across 3 days without sleep. It was brutal. I learned I cannot go without sleep for 2 days in a row. Holy cow, thank you for all the likes. You got me. I'm curious. What happens after the 2-day mark? What kind of symptoms did you have? I made it through the first night without sleep okay, but that second night was so hard because we had to make through the whole day without the opportunity to leave the dorm, which was a big room with tables and games and books and things, and we were each assigned a bedroom, which was like torture because you were not allowed to sleep. Periodically, we would go to our rooms, connect to our monitoring devices, then we would get questions over a headset and would have to press buttons to indicate our responses. I just got slower and slower at each interval, and because they would pause their questions and you had to wait to provide your answers. I started losing the ability to respond. Like, I could hear them talking, but I could not get my body to take action. I think it's called dissociation. I made it to maybe 5 a.m., and I knew I was not going to make it through the next testing time, so I took my money, about $1,200, and left. I can't speak for the original person, but when I went 4 days without sleep, really bad anxiety, normally a heavy weed smoker, but I was in a foreign country, so it wasn't really an option. I got insanely hungry and felt off. I can't quite describe it, but everything just feels wrong. I also started having hallucinations after the second day, mostly just seeing shadows move out of the corner of my eye or lights flickering. Some auditory hallucinations like people walking around when no one's there. Pretty scary, and I wouldn't recommend it. At least that guy got paid. During my senior year of high school, I had a 4-day period where I could not physically sleep due to a reaction with medication, which was still forced to go to school during the 3rd day, till they realized how messed up I was when I started hallucinating the paint on the walls leaking and dripping. Once in high school, I was awake for 3 days straight. I also started hallucinating. That's when I knew, whether I felt tired or not, it was time for bed. I remember staying awake for almost 3 days straight. Towards the end, I remember learning I had the power to snap my fingers to turn the TV on and off. Well, I woke up on the floor watching TV and just kept trying what I'd been doing over and over, and it just stopped working. That's when I realized I had just passed out while watching TV, had a very vivid dream, and I was super bummed out for the next 30 minutes. Ex-military here, and yeah, after 2-ish days, you will begin to hallucinate. It's fracking wild. Longest I've done is 3 days, and by the end of that, I was more than out of it than if I drank a whole carton of beers. The weird thing is, you reach a point where you don't even feel tired anymore. I don't know how it works, but it does. I read somewhere that it's believed you stop feeling tired because your body is thinking, if I haven't slept yet, something must be hunting me, and if I sleep, I'll expire. Not sure I believe that specific reasoning, but a vague, if I haven't slept yet, there must be a good reason to still be awake, so let's turn off the sleepy setting. Sounds plausible enough to me. Melatonin probably just drops because the brain is like, frack it, you're not getting the clue. Brain is probably like, unaliving must be hunting you very hard lately, or you wouldn't be doing this. I'll ease up. I don't think I have that. I think my body just says, yeah, you're going to sleep. I have never been able to stay up more than 24 hours. I've also had a sleep study done before to diagnose a sleep disorder I have, and I had all those wires and everything, sensors stuck to me while I slept. It was really hard to sleep. Story 3. I have lots of memories of dumpster diving for presents during the holiday season. At work recently, in an effort to make remote work more bearable, my team asked a question about what is a holiday memory that is most distinct in your mind. So many people had these wonderful memories of playing in the snow or cooking something with their family or going on vacation to this place or that place. So many people had these descriptions of middle-class life because I'm in a white-collar profession that is dominated almost exclusively by middle-class white women. I didn't feel comfortable sharing my experience of digging through dumpsters for toys for my siblings and my parents as a holiday memory. I couldn't share that the most memorable thing that comes to mind when I think of the holidays is when my family procured a Costco-sized package of breath mints. And we ate those nonstop for 4 weeks until I got an unbearable stomachache. And what I remember most about that is that I can't eat breath mints anymore because the smell of them makes me sick. But that's not the type of memory one can share with their coworkers, if they are middle-class white women and expect to walk out of that transaction the same person. So I don't share that part of myself with people that I spend a good amount of my day with. It's all a long-winded way of saying, thank you for sharing this part of you with strangers on the internet. It feels good to not feel alone. I hope you know that you're not alone. I feel you. Grew up in an area that was all middle, upper-class families. Mine, on the other hand, struggled for years, financially and mentally, mostly while I was in elementary school. I learned from a young age to not talk about holidays because while other kids went skiing on vacation and opened the newest toys on Christmas morning, my mom was having manic depressive episodes and we were struggling to buy enough groceries. I used to secretly flip through the Toys R Us mailed catalog and circle things, pretending my life was so different. It really helped that my best friends knew my secrets, and I ended up marrying an incredibly emotionally mature man who went through something similar. You aren't alone. Now that is rough. The closest I've ever been to in that is buying from thrift stores. Maybe finding something useful in a very clean bin of giveaway trash or something like that. That's awful. I'm glad this person survived what they were going through. Story 4. I participated in some market research for a new beer. Sounded great at the time. I get paid to drink beer? Anyway, it was a bunch of different beers in small plastic cups, all of which started out tasting like the strainings of the devil's underpants and progressively got worse. They kept bringing more out until one guy cracked, swiped all his beers off the table, and stormed out yelling, "I wouldn't even give this smeg to my dog." I still don't know if it was market research or some bizarre psychological experiment. I drank beer in market research before, too. It was different versions of a new Bud Light, though. How many in did you get before you swiped them all off the table and screamed that you wouldn't serve it to your dog? After the first few sips, I started pretending to drink them. There were about 6 beers per round, in tiny disposable cups, kind of like what hospitals give you your pills in. And it was about round 4 when one of the participants spat his out, swiped them off the table, and grabbed the table like he was going to flip it. The funny thing was, half the people there looked like the type of Australians that would still drink a warm beer in the middle of summer if it was free. We all got paid $150 cash for it. It took about an hour, all up. I found it hilarious because everyone was so excited at the beginning, and by the end, it was the polar opposite. Everyone just snatched their cash from the facilitator, stormed out, and angrily sweared at how fracking awful the beer was all the way out the building and down the street. If it was a psychological experiment, then they didn't debrief you about the actual purpose afterwards. That goes against the ethical guidelines, at least in the U.S. Story 5. I met a complete stranger from the internet to sell him some used underwear. If it were a send-it-in-the-mail thing, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But part of it was that he wanted me to meet him to give them to him, and then he would pay me in cash. It was a pretty good amount, so I went for it. We talked for a while beforehand, and he was really nice. I didn't get the vibe that I was going to get slayed, and I needed the money. It was a quick meet-up in a Walmart parking lot. Nothing really bad happened. I did this back in college as well. Pleasant dude I met over Craigslist would buy used panties weekly and often give me gift cards to Victoria's Secret on top of the payment. He traveled fairly often and would also bring sweets and books from his trips for me. I honestly hope he's doing well. The money was good, and he seemed like a well-meaning dude. Not desperate, but in the early 2000s, I sold a used pair of ballet flats that I thought would go for next to nothing on eBay. They sold for about $60, and that's when I learned about the world of used fetish shoes. In those days, you could contact an eBay customer directly, and innocent me was curious as to why they sold for so much, so I contacted the buyer. He was straightforward in his explanation, asked if I had any more, and I sold him 2 more pairs directly without paying the eBay fees. I didn't need the money, but it sure helped. Edit to add, I was and am still married. I told him about it, and we laughed.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 6. Many years ago, when I was a child and my mother and I were facing homelessness, we'd spend the night at various places like laundromats or hospitals. One night, when we were really hungry, she had me dive into the wishing well to collect quarters to use for the vending machine. It's one of those surreal memories that stuck with me. Edit. Dang, thanks for all the kind words, everyone. I am thankfully and fortunately in a much better place in my life now. My mother, bless her heart, passed away a few years after the event in question. We had a complicated relationship because of how young I was, but I don't hold anything against her as an adult. Life just deals people a rough hand sometimes. I certainly don't know what I would have done better if I were in her shoes. If I tossed money in a wishing well and a starving kid fished it out, I'd consider it money well spent. Do what you need to. I've seen kids splashing around in a mall fountain collecting coins people tossed in. No one seemed to care. The kids were really excited they found money and were getting their pants wet, so I'm guessing their parents were off trying on clothes or something. My point is, if you do, I wouldn't be too bad about it. The coins have to be cleaned out every so often to keep fountains from becoming a big slug mess. I haven't found myself at this point, but I have been at points where I've been aware of where there might be extra change somewhere, like the return slot of payphones, if anyone can remember those. Not good times. Story 7. I was poor growing up. Really poor. One time, around age 8 or 9, I collected a bunch of buttons, whenever I could find them around the house, and then hit the street door to door trying to sell them for $1 apiece. It took me 3 hours to make $5. I was so excited that I finally had enough money to buy a sugary cereal. Lucky Charms. I went to 7-Eleven, bought a box, and got home to eat it, but we didn't have milk, so I started to cry. I ended up using water instead. It was very, very pitiful. Fast forward 40 years, and now I can buy milk and cereal anytime I want. It's great. I never take it for granted. I read through a bunch of comments, and this is the one that choked me up. You were a sweet little boy that just wanted his Lucky Charms. I wish I could give that boy a hug and tell them that when he grows up, he will have all the milk and cereal his heart wants. Edit. Thanks for the award. Story 8. In university, I signed up as a lab rat for various studies. One involved staying awake for 30-plus hours in a room with no sunlight, communication, or anything else that might give me a sense of time. Among blood and urine tests, as well as various probes and monitoring devices, it also involved keeping a thermometer in my butt the entire time. $1,400 is $1,400, though. Why is he keeping a thermometer up his butt? I don't know, but it's not affecting the study, so let them be. Damn, I probably would have done that. I signed up for a bunch of studies in college, but they were mainly psychology or behavior related. Most I ever got was a few hundred for playing some sort of game while in an MRI machine. They were studying multitasking and its effect on the brain. Also gave me a copy of the MRI of my brain. Story 9. About 10 years ago when I was homeless, a kind old homeless lady that I used to buy water and snacks for was crying because she was $20 short of getting a hotel room for the night, and she wanted to shower so badly. So I had a friend drive me to Walmart, and I walked around the parking lot looking for receipts until I found one with something decent that wasn't food. It had a $40 case of diapers on it. So I went inside, matched the barcode on the receipt to a box of diapers on the shelf, and went up to customer service and said my mom wanted me to return them. Got $40 cash, gave half to the lady for her hotel, and spent the rest on food and drinks. She was so happy she started crying again and hugged me. I still think about that day a lot. Story 10. While I never sold blood to buy alcohol, there was a time when I donate blood every Friday night in order to require less alcohol. Edit. Several people have pointed out that the body doesn't replenish red blood cells that quickly, so it looks like there's some kind of trick of memory going on here. This was 20-plus years ago, so probably I was donating plasma and not blood, and either misremembering or did not at the time know the difference. Also possible is just that something I did a few times grew in memory to something I did weekly. Brains are weird. Bro. Story 11. Those dumb surveys. Wasn't worth the time I wasted. Only got like $10 total before I gave up. As a kid I did that, and they paid us in these dumb token things that were worth pennies. Had a couple hundred, but it wasn't worth anything. Yeah, that was fracking Bitcoin. And I got rid of that computer and never found the old emails again. Would be a millionaire right now. Ouch. If it's any consolation, you would have likely cashed out when you made a couple thousand or 10,000 bucks. I don't think people typically sit on Bitcoin for a decade through all kinds of crashes on the off chance they make 1,000,000% eventually. Story 12. You know you've reached rock bottom when you start working in life insurance. On my last leg, I got my insurance license and then learned the job was purely commission and you make more money if you're a manager, only to find out that as a manager, you have operational costs. So you actually end up spending more money just to get through the month. Then you find out it's a pyramid scheme. This is not an insurance company. It's a hiring company that had a revolving door that never stops spinning. Primerica? Story 13. I scoured every inch of my car, trunk, under carpet, pulled out seats to find enough change not to bounce a check. I needed less than $1 and had about an hour to find the money and deposit it. The banker lady knew what was up when I made the deposit. 30-some years later, and I still haven't bounced a check. We used to go couch diving as teenagers to buy cigarettes in the 90s. Usually, between me and a couple of friends, we'd be able to dig up enough change for a cheap pack we could split. These days, I rarely even carry cash, so there's never any hidden money around the house to find. Story 14. Hold a sign for people to see at an intersection. Normally, this isn't bad. However, it is a local thing to bully those that do by throwing food items like milkshakes and slushies at them, which is why I was hesitant to do so. That's horrible. We love our sign guys here. Sure, we don't get them often, but damn, they can move. I'm honestly not sure how they can summon the motivation to look like they enjoy their jobs like that, but mad frackin' respect. Story 15. Drive around nice apartment complexes and dig through their garbage like a raccoon for stuff I could pawn. Best find? A smeg load of amps that were some sort of antique and worth a lot of money. I don't know anything about music equipment, but my friend who's a musician let me know they were worth big money before I went to pawn them. Story 16. I pawned some handmade jewelry that was passed to me from someone very special. When I got paid less than 2 weeks later, my items were missing from the pawn shop. I have never gotten over that, and it makes me sad I never even got to wear her jewelry to something special. I would have reported the pawn shop to their licensing agency. Wonder how many other people had their stuff mysteriously disappeared. For future pawners? How would one get that info? Story 17. I joined a medical study that was researching the effects of severe weight gain and weight loss on bone marrow. Involved 10 days of eating 6,000 calories a day and then 10 days of not eating anything. You had to stay in a hospital room the entire time. Every day they took a bone marrow sample, which was decidedly not fun. $7,000 at the end of 20 days. You can get paid to do that? I've been doing it for free all these years. Story 18. I made $50 when I was randomly approached in a bar to be on a foot fetish site. There was no nudity or actual spiciness involved. Just a lot of pictures of women's feet on my face, chest, etc. It was way more uncomfortable than it should have been. Story 19. Drew furry not safe for work of someone's OC tool. I'm not even a furry artist, but I got $120 for drawing a blue double shark tool in one afternoon, so whatever. Could afford Christmas presents for the fam after that.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.